So you want to get better at drawing buildings like this, and this, and this.
Wow!
These are just a few buildings that I've drawn myself, and in this video, I'll explain how you can do it too. One of the most valuable skills you can learn if you want to get better at drawing buildings is to get better at drawing in perspective. And I say buildings, but let's be honest, learning how to draw in perspective will make you better at drawing anything you can imagine. If you want to draw buildings like a pro, then perspective is something you can't overlook, but fortunately for you, it's a subject that I teach here on YouTube. Simple Perspective is a perspective drawing guide made for complete beginners, but I'm not here to convince you to watch that, although it is free and I'm sure you'll learn a lot from doing so. Instead, I'm here to convince you to check out my Patreon page, where I create new perspective drawing tutorials of a different building each and every month. I'm not trying to plug all of my paid content here. The only reason I mention this is because I have a very specific process I go through each time I create a drawing of a building this way. A process that you can learn too, just like Boxman. Boxman is currently learning how to draw in perspective in an effort to also do the same, but he keeps getting frustrated because he doesn't have a good understanding of perspective yet. Every time he draws a building, he keeps making a lot of mistakes. Some of you watching will probably relate to Boxman. As I said a moment ago, it really does make things easier if you have even just a basic understanding of perspective, but if you don't, then don't worry, it doesn't mean you're completely useless. It just means you need a bit of extra help. That's why whenever we draw a building in one of my tutorials, I usually provide a perspective grid which includes a basic form of the building we are drawing. Boxman appreciates this because it means he doesn't have to worry about setting up a drawing in perspective, and instead he can get drawing right away, doing what he enjoys. The reason I start with a basic form is because not only does it help to position the building on an angle I want to draw it at, but it also establishes the vanishing points and horizon line. A lot of the time, these vanishing points are off the page. That's why I also create a perspective grid to help guide your lines as you draw. So I call these basic forms because they are made up of basic volumes. Volumes such as boxes, cylinders, cones and spheres. Although when drawing buildings, you're mostly going to be dealing with boxes. Learning how to draw boxes in perspective, boxes at different sizes and on different angles is useful because, I mean not just buildings, but most things I draw in perspective starts as a box. And I refer to this process as blocking out the drawing. Then I work within these boxes, using them as a wireframe to help me develop more complex forms. Thankfully, most buildings are rectangular. Rarely do they involve forms that are trickier to draw in perspective, although the same can be said for some of these modern buildings, but for the most part, when drawing a building, you'll be able to condense it down to its basic form. To do this, ignore all of the windows and the doors, all of the details, right? Just get rid of them. And instead, just pay attention to the boxes and volumes which make up the building's overall form. You'll often find that you need to combine multiple boxes together. If you are dealing with a building that has a pitched roof, then you'll have to divide up these boxes in order to construct that. If you are familiar with my videos, then it's all stuff that you've seen me do before. But if you are not familiar with my videos, then, well, shame on you, you tourist. Speaking of tourists, whenever I go travelling, I find myself taking photos of buildings that I find interesting. Like when I went to Japan, there were so many things that I wanted to draw. I've drawn a lot of buildings from Japan and I still have more to go, but the reason I mention this is because I want to talk about reference images. Now, you can't draw something unless you know what it looks like. For example, if I asked you to draw Boxman's car, you wouldn't know how to do it because he doesn't even have a car. He crashed it, and now he needs a new one. But my point here is that when drawing buildings, yes, you can draw from imagination, but it always helps to have some reference images. I often take things from multiple reference images when creating a drawing, like this window from here, or that door from there. Hey, look, that air conditioning unit looks cool. I'll take that too and put it in my building, or on my building. You don't have to draw everything exactly as you see it. You do have some creative freedom to add and subtract. And when it comes to buildings, they have a style, right? They have very distinct features which are worth paying attention to. Some of you will know that I've studied architecture, and I remember coming across a book, I don't own it, but it was called How to Read Buildings. And you're probably thinking, how do you read a building? Well, it's all about identifying the architectural elements in order to understand how and why and when the building was constructed. Just like my YouTube channel and everything else in this world, even architecture goes out of fashion. We don't see buildings being made that look like this anymore, because this is a medieval building, and we know this through all of the typical features included from that era. Even the buildings from Japan that I draw, I know I keep going on about it, but they have very distinctive features as well. You know, like vending machines. Okay, they're not part of a building, but they may as well be, because you see them outside every building, or like those air conditioning units. You see a lot of them, you know, the tiled roofs, the signs and displays, all of these things which I really enjoy drawing, make these buildings what they are. How lucky we are to have Google, to be able to search for all of these reference images in seconds. Okay, so I've discussed perspective, I've discussed basic forms, I've discussed reference images, all of the things you need to be able to start drawing buildings. Now, don't worry, I know that you need as much help as you can get, but I'm not going to draw these buildings for you. Instead, I've made a separate video in which I walk you through the entire process, creating this drawing step by step. So check out that video here if you are interested. And again, if you love drawing buildings like myself, then I'm sure you'd love my Patreon page, where there's plenty of additional tutorials, with more added each and every month. Thank you all for watching this video and joining me today. Hopefully you found this useful, and yeah, be sure to keep practicing, keep learning, you know, learn perspective, because it will help massively. And as I say, I'm making the best beginner's guide ever, so check that out, Simple Perspective. Anyways, thank you for watching, I'll see you in the next one.